Hello, I'm Mayor Dan Kemmis. Welcome to City Limits. Here in Missoula, we're surrounded by mountains and snow, which provides us with many winter activities. But there are some challenges in paradise. Tonight we'll be discussing whether Missoula has enough variety of winter sports and what role the city should play in providing those sports. My guests and I are looking forward to hearing what you have to say and answering any questions you might have. My guests are Winter Sports Advisory Committee Chairman Gordon Opel and Winter Sports Committee members Sue Monk and Jerry Cavalt. But before visiting with them, City Limits reporter Terry Myers tells us about winter sports in Missoula and some of the problems facing them.
Does Missoula have enough variety of winter sports? If you like downhill skiing, you're in the right place, because Missoula is home to 2 ski areas within 30 minutes of the city. Snow Bowl, northwest of Missoula, caters to advanced and expert skiers. It provides 28 runs, and it has the longest vertical drop of any Montana ski area. Marshall Ski Area is northeast of Missoula. Its highest point is 5,500 feet. Marshall is known as a family ski area and one for beginners. One of its main attractions is its night skiing. As with all ski areas, the success of both Snow Bowl and Marshall depends on the weather and how much snow falls. Snow Bowl's elevation is high enough, 7,600 feet at the top, so its operators don't have to worry much about snowfall. But Marshall does. It must provide man-made snow in order to survive. On March 1st, Marshall closed temporarily because there wasn't enough snow and it hasn't been cold enough for man-made snow. Owner Ben Lane says he won't reopen until Marshall gets at least 8 inches of snow. But Marshall has other problems. The State Tramway Licensing Board shut down Marshall's T-bar for a few days last month because it didn't meet safety regulations. The board also wants Marshall to install a phone line from the bottom of the T-bar to the top. Lane declined comment about the state's actions. For Snow Bowl, its access road is a big problem. Many people won't travel the road because they believe it's unsafe. 2 buses can't travel in opposite directions on the road because it's too narrow. UN Wellness Director Gordon Opel heads a winter sports committee that tackles problems like these.
There are some problems with each one of the major winter sport activities here in Missoula. What we're trying to do is look at the activities that exist and find ways that we can improve them.
Stan Cohen is an historian and author of A Pictorial History of Downhill Skiing. He says both ski areas have improved over the years.
It's a lot better skiing now than it was when I first started 29 years ago.
Winter Sports Committee member Tom Cosina says Missoula is fortunate to have 2 ski areas at its doorstep.
I think proximity to the areas is the great advantage that we have.
What if you don't like skiing?
What? That's why the examination of the other activities, I think, is important here. I think the ice skating opportunity, again, is probably going to be the one that gets the most public play, if you would, because it's going to require some public investment, most likely, public dollars, tax dollars being invested in the creation and maintenance of a facility.
If you like figure skating or hockey, Missoula may not be the right place for you. An article in the Wall Street Journal last month rated skiing first in winter sports and ice skating second. Missoula doesn't have an indoor arena for ice skating. There are 2 outdoor skating areas, like this one at McCormick Park, but if the weather isn't cold enough to completely freeze it, then you don't skate. The Winter Sports Committee believes there's enough demand in Missoula for an ice rink, and they're trying to get one. In 1955, Missoula did have an outdoor refrigerated ice rink on the University of Montana campus, but it was closed in 1967 because the school couldn't keep up on repairs. It used to be right here, where the Grizzly Pool and Art Annex now sit. Although Missoula doesn't have an ice rink, it does have a hockey team. The Flying Mules have to travel to Spokane and rent a rink to play home games. In Missoula, they practice at Playfair Park, where they usually have ice for about 3 to 5 weeks a year. This year, they had 2 months of good ice. Winter Sports Committee member Dick Goldsmith says the committee is trying to get an indoor ice rink in Missoula. He says McCormick Park is a possible site. The price tag on the rink could be about $1 million. Goldsmith says there are 2 options for funding the rink. The city could borrow the money from a bank and lend it to a nonprofit organization who would be responsible for the project. That organization would then make payments on the loan to the city. The second option is to have Missoulians pay for it by raising taxes. Snowmobiling is another popular winter sport, and there are a number of trails near Missoula. Most of the trails are on state-owned land and are accessible to anyone. The Blue Mountain area is a popular spot and is only a 10-minute drive from town. The only thing snowmobilers have to worry about is too little snow. And the same thing goes for cross-country skiers who have access to skiing in Patty Canyon and several other areas, including Nightingale Nordic on Lolo Pass, when there's enough snow. Lolo Peak is southwest of the city. It is also forest land accessible to anyone. There's no development on the land, but members of this community want to change that. Some people say a resort here on Lolo Peak would create more and better winter sports in Missoula. There hasn't been much debate on this issue the past year, but the Lolo Peak Research Committee President Steve Rutherford said the issue is very much alive. The problem is that some people don't think the mountain could get enough snow. However, Rutherford said the committee is now doing more snow sampling research to determine whether or not it could get enough snow. The top of Lolo Peak is 9,000 feet, and it has a potential skiable vertical drop of 5,300 feet, which is more than any existing area in the United States. Rutherford said a Lolo Peak resort would have to be a year-round operation and would only be possible if it attracted people from all over the United States. For City Limits, I'm Terry Myers.
When I was running for mayor of Missoula in 1989, I was asked several times what my position was on the proposal for a development at Lolo Peak. My response generally was that, first of all, that the people of Missoula had been given a chance to vote on whether or not they wanted to pursue a development there, and the answer to that question was that if it was proven to be environmentally sound and economically sound, that the people would like to see us pursue it, and that therefore I thought that, that we should ask those questions. But I also said that I thought that it was a mistake for Missoula to put all of its eggs in one basket, that I had seen too many communities look at major developments like Lolo Peak and spend many years asking themselves whether or not to build them. And then if the answer comes back, no, you're really right where you started. And so I suggested that while we were looking at Lolo Peak, that we should also be looking at the potential for expanding winter sports in Missoula in a number of different ways. Tonight we'd like to visit with you about some of what we have discovered in the months since we started those discussions. We'd like to invite you to call in and be part of our discussions here this evening. The number to call if you're interested in joining us is 243-2715. So give us a call and join us. If nobody calls, we'll have some good conversation here, but we'd like to hear from you. So I'm going to start with Gordon Opel. Gordon, shortly after I took office, I gave you a call and said, I'm interested in forming a winter sports committee of some kind to look into the prospects for expanding and improving winter sports in Missoula. What did you think of when I made that contact with you?
My kind of mayor, Dan.
Oh, good.
I really appreciated it. From the standpoint, first of all, I really respected the fact that you had the foresight and interest in looking at recreation and recognizing what a valuable commodity it was and how important it was to our community. So I was very enthusiastic to be involved in that respect as part of your team. But also personally, I know in 1983, when I moved to Missoula from Minnesota, I came out here and I was just amazed at what wimpy winters we had in Missoula. I was very disappointed. You know, everybody thinks of Montana as being a major winter state, and I found just the opposite to be true in many respects as it compares to Minnesota. And
we're used to hearing that from Minnesota. You know, nobody else says that, but all Minnesotans say that. Yeah.
Well, it was a change. But in any event, I was also amazed to see that the extent to which winter sports were available in Missoula was really somewhat limited, and I'm referring specifically to cross-country skiing and ice skating. Certainly alpine skiing was well entrenched here and thriving, but the Nordic skiing and ice skating seemed to be really taking a back seat to alpine skiing, and just the availability of quality skiing and skating was limited. And while there was really nothing I could do about the weather, I figured there was something I could do about trying to improve the quality of especially cross-country skiing, which is my real love. And so we began working, myself and a number of other people in Missoula, trying to see what we could do to improve skiing in Missoula, particularly focusing on the Paddy Canyon area, and trying to improve trails and improve the grooming of cross-country skiing. So it was really that skiing, cross-country aspect of winter sports that got my initial interest, and I felt we were successful in expanding and improving Nordic skiing in Missoula, and I thought, sounds great, why can't we do the same thing with some of the other winter activities? So,
all right. Well, let's come back and pick up the story a little bit more about winter sports, but we do have a caller. We have Will on the line. Hello, Will.
Hello, Dan.
How are you?
This evening. Dan, I'd like to ask you a question about this winter sports program. I'm a little bit concerned about the cost of the program for a number of reasons. First of all, we have an obvious air quality problem in Missoula. Our streets are rather dirty, and there's not enough money to fund an amount of street cleaning equipment necessary to keep it clean. The air quality is poor in the winter and in summer on the basis of wood stoves, auto emissions, and the dust pollution from the roads. We have people suffering from respiratory illness here, and this includes children and senior citizens. Our aquifer is threatened. We have some wells that have been shut down. We have no citywide recycling program. We have a very dangerous landfill perched above and near Missoula, and virtually no citywide public education program which would address environmental issues through very, very inexpensive mailing programs. And yet the city council members are telling us that we have no money available to fund critically important environmental programs, no environmental officers, for example. And I would like you to explain to the people of this city how we can justify prioritizing city needs such as $85,000 aqua paint jobs on bridges, semi-pro baseball team, a $3 million parking lot, a $500,000 bridge across the Clark Fork River. We now have, I believe, 4 or 5 bridges. And now what appears to be a multi-million-dollar winter sports program, which will include, I hear, a $1 million ice rink, and which will result in more traffic, more pollution, dirtier air and water, before we even begin dealing with some of the very critical issues. And I mean this from the heart. I'm really wondering if we're doing the right thing and putting our money in the right places. I would certainly like to see, first of all, cleaner air.
Okay, well, let's see what our panel here has to say about that. Were you able to hear Will's question by and large? I'll start out. First of all, as I understand it, there haven't been any decisions made yet. We're very much at the talking stage here. But I guess that the way that I look at it is that we are looking at how to improve life in Missoula. It seems to me that most of the people that have been involved in this discussion have pretty serious commitment to the quality of life in Missoula. So I'd be surprised to find that that many of the people involved in the committee aren't cognizant of the kinds of problems that Will raises. Any response to that, Jerry?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. Will seems really tuned into a lot of the problems that we all are aware of here in Missoula, and I hear that there's a lot of competent people working on those things. But as we're working on serious problems in any community, it's also important to have some fun. I think that's real important to have some fun. And we haven't spent any money at this point. All of the work that's been done has been on a volunteer basis, and there's meetings happening and people trying to bring together some very creative ideas of how we might, like you said, improve the quality of life for people right here in Missoula. And I think that some ideas are going to come out of this to reduce the amount of traffic. If we can give people enjoyable things to do close to home on bus systems, routes, and without traveling out of town, out of state, and so on, we're doing some good for not only our environment, but everybody's. And I think that this can be a part of the big package, looking at not only the negative things about Missoula, but some of the real exciting fun possibilities that make it a good place to live and want people to come here that'll help solve problems. And we solve problems with people and providing a good place for people to live and enjoy. And so I think it all works together to deal with some of the things that Will's talking about in this way.
Well, thanks. We've got another caller. Jim is on the line. Hello, Jim.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Good. Go
Yeah.
ahead with your question or your comment.
Well, the question I wanted to ask is that don't you really think we need, and I'm sure panel members think this too, that an ice arena, indoor ice arena would be a good thing. There are lots of kids, you know, and that don't have the opportunity to go alpine skiing or cross-country skiing, and they need something that they can do in town, I would think. And the question is that there should, don't you think there is some way that we could get a facility that we could use and make use of? Missoula in the wintertime can be a pretty dreary place, and that's it.
All right, I'm going to go back to Jerry Cavald on this because, Jerry, I think that you've been active on the ice skating subcommittee of the advisory committee. Is that right?
Yes, I have. Right along.
Tell us a little bit about the background. How is it that you got started talking about ice skating?
Well, during the course of the meetings with the General Winter Sports Council meetings, we decided that one of the things that should receive emphasis in Missoula would be ice skating. It just seems like the right kind of a community with athletic people that do things in the summer, and ice should just fit our psychology just to a T. And as we've started to do some calling around and so on, we're finding that to be very much the case. Lots of people, just like the caller, are saying, hey, it's time we had indoor ice for Missoula because our outdoor ice is not that reliable. So there's a group of people that now have come together and are working on this. To be fair, I would say that there's been a group of people committed to ice in Missoula for several years, providing the outdoor ice at Playfair Park and the city providing it at McCormick Park. So it isn't new, and there's always been that faction. Your committee has just given it new excitement and some new intervention, I think, and people are meeting now to get involved and find ways to finance and to bring indoor ice arena to the city.
One of the things that I've enjoyed about this is that you find out things about people that you never knew before. And one of the things that I've found out is how many frustrated hockey players there are and frustrated figure skaters in Missoula who just don't have any place to go. And you never know who these people are because you never see them on skates. But it's real interesting to me to see, and it cuts all across generations, too.
That's the good part about it. It really does cut across all age groups, and communities who've developed indoor ice find that it's just enthusiastically received. Even some of the communities that have not been ice skating communities, like Eugene, Oregon, created a indoor arena, and now they're having good reception from the people. So.
When the committee presented its report to me, it really made ice the focus. Can either of you explain what that was all about? You were talking about a number of different sports, but you kind of wanted to focus on ice. Why was that, Gordon?
Well, I think one of the prime reasons, Dan, as identified with the last caller, is that Missoula is oftentimes a place where winter is rather marginal, as we've already alluded to, and that it is really our darkest hour. No pun intended. But that we felt we needed to do something in town to bring a feeling of winter to this community. much the same way that in New York at Madison Square Garden, or I'm sorry,
Rockefeller.
the Rockefeller Center, thank you, where the ice skating is very visible and really connects people to the out of doors, to winter. And we're looking at a similar kind of phenomena happening in Missoula, where we have winter sport, winter recreation, and a way to get community members involved in a winter activity and to accommodate those people who perhaps aren't inclined to go alpine skiing or cross-country skiing. A place where kids can come, where families can come. It's right here in town, and it's winter. And there's so many examples throughout the country where it is working, and we feel, as Jerry says, that this would be very appropriate for Missoula as well.
Are you talking about ice all year round, or ice during the winter, or fall, winter, and spring, or is that one of those things that's not really settled yet?
Well, I think it is not settled yet. It would be nice if when there is an indoor arena, if it could run year-round. And there may be that kinds of possibility with a community-oriented ice arena. But certainly we're thinking that through early October and then on through the winter months into March and April, it would be very well received here.
I want to remind our watchers, the viewers, that we'd like to hear from you. Give us a call and talk to us about winter sports in Missoula. The number to call is 243-2715. And while we're waiting to hear from viewers, I'd like to ask Sue, we talked a little bit earlier about Lolo Peak and the idea of bringing a major downhill ski area to Missoula. But we do have downhill skiing in Missoula, and it's an important part of winter life in Missoula. One of the things we asked the advisory committee to look at is whether there are ways that we, as a community, can make that work better. Have you come up with any suggestions?
Well, we have. We have a group of committed community citizens who are working on the alpine skiing aspect of winter sports and are looking to serve as a catalyst to enhance the downhill skiing in our area. And we have found that from meeting both of the area managers and owners, that there are some things that we can do to help. First of all, we've been focusing a lot of our attention on the Snowball Road, and there are a number of reasons why that's important. The perception that it's a dangerous road and that it keeps people from going up to Snowball and utilizing the area is one important reason. Another is that it's dangerous for buses, and that does speak to one of Will's concerns in terms of traffic and that sort of thing. We would like to have more public transportation up to the area, and that also addresses, if we could get buses up to Snowball, it also addresses the problem of parking so that we don't have to chop into the mountain to build more parking lot, for instance, that we could get more people to use the area on buses.
What would it take to improve the road? Who has the responsibility and what kinds of improvements?
Mm-hmm. Well, the road is owned, it's a joint tenancy agreement between the Forest Service and Snowball. And so we have visited with the Forest Service just recently about the Snowball Road and what it would take to improve it. We've met with their road engineers and also with the forest supervisor. And what it will take is sitting down. The Forest Service cannot do it alone, basically. They have a capital roads improvement program, which is region-wide, but the Forest Service can't take the load of improving the road by itself. So it's going to take an effort by Snowball owners, the county, and the Forest Service to get together and work out some kind of an agreement. What we need to improve the road, what sort of standards do we need? Do we need a graveled road or a paved road or whatever it is? And we'll have to come up with those standards. So it's going to take some sitting down and working out those sorts of things. Also, it's going to take a look at the future of Snowball where it's going in the next 10 years. And so Snowball's owners need to look at a master plan for, you know, what their future looks like. And there are a lot of things that need to be done, and the community, citizens, volunteers can help a lot in assisting that process. And so we're going to be meeting in the Joint Review Council with Forest Service and the county and Snowball in the near future to work out some of those issues.
Okay. I want to follow up on that. First, I want to remind viewers that if you want to give us a call here and talk about winter sports, the number to call is 243-2715. We'd love to hear from you. I guess we do have a call. Carter is on the line. Hello, Carter.
Hi, Dan.
Hello there. Go ahead.
To join in on the comments about the buses, I realize that there's a problem with snowball on the roads, but I wonder if any consideration would be given to public transit when there is enough snow. To example, Patty Canyon, McClay Flat, Rattlesnake Creek for cross country, and also a fee or otherwise bus to Lolo Pass for Nordic skiers. The parking there is limited. The day use, there is no day use fee there right now, and I wonder if that had been considered.
I see some nodding heads. Gordon?
Well, I think there's no question, Carter, that there is interest in public transportation to these recreation areas. Lolo Pass is an hour drive away. You'll see a lot of people on weekends going up with 2, 3 people in a car. And clearly, if there was a strong enough need, there would be justification for some type of public transportation in the form of a bus going up there 2 or 3 times a day, perhaps, ferrying skiers back and forth. And I think the same thing would hold true for Patty Canyon. I think one of the, it illustrates one of the aspects this committee is all about. As we generate more enthusiasm for winter sports, as we're able to coordinate these activities, this type of planning and access will come to fruition. So your point is very well taken, and I'm very optimistic that as we continue to respond to these issues, that in the near future we'll see some very positive changes, such as public transportation to these specific recreational sites.
One of the ideas behind the formation of the committee was that so often we deal with items or subjects in isolation from each other, and people who are involved are dealing in isolation from each other. So that, for example, if people are thinking about ice skating, that they'll all get together and work on ice skating, but they wouldn't think of working with people that are involved in skiing. And we had thought that maybe there would be some advantage in getting the people from those different groups to talk to each other. Have you found that that's been the case? And what kinds of advantages have you found?
Well, I might talk to that for just a minute. That was one of the very basic reasons that the committee thought that we would move ahead with ice as a showcase or the central part of our emphasis, because that could start early and you get people together who are interested in winter, and especially get young people together, and the talk then goes to, hey, there was fresh snow last night up at Lolo Pass or on St. Mary's Peak, and the word spreads among the people that are interested in winter activities, and there certainly is an overlap between skaters and cross-country skiers and downhill skiers. And this could especially take place in young people here in the community. I really thought Carter's thoughts about a bus going to Lolo Pass with cross-country skiers would benefit young people that don't have a way to get in the car and go up there, besides of all the social benefits that could take place for them on a bus trip like that. So there definitely is overlap, and it's just this communication thing, plus the ideas of what works here maybe can be adapted over there.
All right. We do have another caller. Before I put this caller on the line, I'd like to remind other viewers that we'd like to hear from you. Give us a call at 243-2715. Elaine is on the line with a question about ice skating. Hello.
Hello. what can we do to encourage an indoor facility for ice skating, and would you see it as a commercial or a public facility? I would like to particularly encourage people to support this because of winter pollution is often very difficult in the McCormick Park area. In fact, looking down upon skaters from the Orange Street Bridge, they become invisible when we have a bad pollution problem. But my question primarily is, do you see it as a public or a private facility?
Okay, Elaine's question is whether the ice skating facility would be a commercial or a public facility. What have you been looking at, Jerry?
Well, we've made phone calls to many communities throughout the West and some in the Midwest asking that very question. And it always seems to come back that it is a much better facility if it's operated in a public-private sort of a combination, or some places that have had oil revenues or something, they can do it entirely on a public operation sort of thing. It seems to be difficult to make it on a commercial basis, primarily because of taxes and interest rates that it takes to get one of these facilities in place. The interest on $1.5 million or $1 million facility can be very high unless there is some kind of government agency that can back it and get a lower interest rate. So those are key things that the committee is looking at and exploring right now, but it does look like some kind of public or public-private combination or non-profit combination is what most communities end up with.
We've talked quite a bit about kids here, and I've mentioned several times to different members of the committee that part of my interest in all of this is trying to figure out how to make life more interesting for kids. I spend quite a bit of time going around to schools, and I hear over and over again that even though Missoula is probably a more interesting place to live than a lot of other places, that the kids feel that there just isn't that much for them to do, and so they're driven into doing some things that they know aren't necessarily good for them. So one of the reasons I've been interested in all of the winter sports, but maybe especially ice skating, is the idea of giving kids something more to do. But I'm also interested in getting kids involved in helping us figure out how to do it and making it happen. Do you think that that can happen with any of these sports that we're talking about here?
I like to think of the movie Big. Those of you who've not seen it, it's a story about a young boy who goes to work for a toy manufacturer, and he essentially tells the manufacturer what to do, and they listen. And I think that it's a very appropriate analogy here, that kids have great ideas, and while they may not have all the answers for financing and some of the other more technical questions, programmatically I think they can be a great resource, and I think we really need to tap into their expertise.
I've just thought, for example, that with an ice skating rink, that if we want to make it something that kids are going to use, that it's probably a good idea to talk to them about how to build it and how to design it and what kinds of associated facilities to have with it and so on, rather than get it built and then have them come and explain why it's not interesting to them.
You're right, and I hope you stay on the committee on that point, because they would be easy to overlook. I'm confident that young people in this community won't be overlooked when we get down to design questions and where questions and how will they get there sorts of things. Those are all really important things that I'm sure we'll keep in front of us.
Let me remind our viewers once again of the phone number here to join our conversation about winter sports. Give us a call at 243-2715. Well, we've talked about alpine skiing and we've talked about ice skating. What about Nordic skiing? Gordon, that's your area.
Well, Nordic skiing is a great sport and I think perfectly suited for Missoula. It's a great family recreation. It is affordable for many people who don't have the financial resources to alpine ski. It's great exercise, and yet traditionally we've been limited in terms of where we can ski, in part by the limited snowfall. The Winter Sports Council has been involved in trying to find some solutions to bring cross-country skiing to the public in a little more organized fashion. And we're working right now to improve the skiing at Patty Canyon. We're working on coordinating things with the Forest Service at Lolo Pass so as to ensure that there will be continued grooming and access to quality skiing at the pass. We're working on trying to promote a trail map that will identify the key areas for cross-country skiing in Missoula and the vicinity, and that will list those trails that provide both groomed ski opportunities and trails for those people who would like to just go out in a more natural setting and make their own trail.
We had a caller earlier asking about whether the ice skating rink would be public or private. That question of public and private has come up in your discussions about cross-country skiing, hasn't it, Gordon?
That's right. There's some concern that by providing public ski trails that it infringes upon the opportunity for the private sector to be financially profitable. What we have recognized is that somebody has to pay for the grooming of cross-country ski trails, and we feel that we want to do all we can to get the sport going. It's going to cost dollars, and people, I think, will need to be prepared to look at spending some money in terms of a trail pass so as to finance skiing cross-country.
I think part of my hope with the committee was that we could increase overall the amount of winter sports activity that people are involved in. I was glad to find somebody in the position that you're in, Gordon, as a wellness director. Part of my interest here is in helping to make Missoula a healthier community, and obviously getting out is one way to do that. So I think that all of us are thinking that if we can get people to think that that Missoula is a place where there's a lot going on, you're going to see people if you go out and do things, you're going to have a good time, that more and more people will do it. And then when it comes down to the question of are you, by providing more public cross-country skiing, are you taking away from private, that wouldn't necessarily be the case. Do you think that's right? Or?
Absolutely, Dan. What's good for public skiing is also going to be good for the private sector. The more skiers that we can build in terms of a base, the better it is for everybody. It's good for the retailers, it's good for the ski area operators. So the more skiers, the better. No question.
All right.
I think it really creates a sense of excitement about winter. You know, and I think that's a really nice spin-off of this whole effort, is that there seems to be an attitude that winter is not a very fun time of year in Missoula, and yet it can be. And we can really create that sense of excitement that winter is a special time of year, and there's a lot to do, and we don't have to be depressed and feel gray, because that's sort of what we think it's like outside, when it's actually very beautiful in parts of Missoula in the wintertime. It can be just tremendous.
We were talking about that at one of our recent meetings, and it seems like one of our target audiences for getting enthused about winter should be the people that report the weather during the winter on the news stations here in Missoula, and get them excited about ice skating and out taking pictures of people skiing cross country and little kids out there in downhill equipment going up and down and emphasizing what's happening in our ski areas, and get that kind of enthusiasm that winter is it's a time when we can enjoy the drama of winter. We should want our winter memories to last into July, sort of thing. And they could be good ones that do that here in Missoula.
We do. We've got another call from Ron. Hello, Ron.
Hello.
Thanks for calling.
I was wondering if, now that Lolo Peak seems to be a dead issue, if there's been any effort by your committee to get that energy that was being put into Lolo and redirecting it toward expanding snowball into the Evero area, which would eliminate the need for the Snowball Road, make the front side of Snowball at Evero, and you could actually attract more Canadian skiers and whatnot.
Sue or Jerry? Jerry, I know that you're some of the energy that was working on Lolo Peak and bringing us information about downhill skiing and so on. Either you or Sue have a response to Ron?
Well, I might start to catch Ron's first thing there of, is any of the energy from the Lolo Peak emphasis being captured? At the beginning of this program, Stan Cohn was on talking about winter sports, and he was very much a part of the group that was interested in Lolo Peak and the potential there. So yes, I think that that group is interested in Lolo Peak still, but also what else can be done to make winter interesting in Missoula. And then Sue might want to talk about the master planning that was going to be necessary.
I wanted to add on to what Jerry said about the energy. I think it's being redirected in some respects toward our existing areas, and I think that that's really healthy, and I think people are now looking at our areas and going, gee, what is it that we could do to enhance those two areas, because there are a lot of opportunities at both areas, not just at Snowball. In response to the idea of expansion, we have talked to the owners about the possibilities of expansion, and that's where the master plan really is important. And that is something that the owners of Snowball are looking into. We do have a letter from Dr. Morris, looking into the future, and that is going to be expanded on in his master plan. And he'll be looking at the opportunities for North Slope skiing, which is in the Evero area. Of course, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of developing that North Slope skiing. It's not just a matter of, gee, wouldn't it be nice, and let's go do it. Ski areas are very capital intensive, as we all know. It takes a lot of money to develop a ski area. And so the planning stages are really important. And that's what we're going to be focusing on, helping both areas to be focusing on in the next, maybe next year and a half or so.
I think
so it's a possibility, and certainly a good one, and there are some great potential out there.
And I think Ron hit on another point of bringing Canadians and so on, and I don't think we'd want to overlook that Snowball's marketing director worked hard this past year and had, I think it was 26 buses of Canadians come down through the winter. And that's no small deal. That has spin off to the restaurants here in town, to the shops, and lots of people enjoying those folks that come down. So that potential is definitely there, and like Sue's pointed out, some of that is being energized, I think, in the areas right now, and that's exciting to see.
It is, and it sounds like there are a lot of people in town who feel that there's a lot more potential for bringing Canadians down, and the better the winter sports are, the more likely it is to happen. Got another caller. First, I want to remind viewers to give us a call at 243-2715 if you'd like to join the conversation here about winter sports. Hello, Tom, are you there?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, it seems to me you're addressing winter sports and the desires of winter sports enthusiasts. Your research, I think, and everything seems good, and by and large, I support it. However, is this the will of the majority of the people in Missoula? And how will you finance this through taxes upon those people in Missoula?
That's a good question, and I'm glad that you asked it. It's the kind of question that we need to have asked here. I suspect that, especially if we look at a publicly financed or partly publicly financed ice skating rink, that we would have to put it on the ballot and have a bond issue election on it, which I think is a good thing to do, because it's the way that you answer the question that Tom asked. You find out then whether people want to pay for it or not, and in the long run, that's the way that we ought to do it. I'm not sure what the answer is. I think it'll depend a lot on how well conceived it is and how well presented it is. I guess one of the ways that I like to think about this, though, is that while we always need to be aware of limitations on our resources, and obviously in my position I'm made aware of that all the time, but I also think that you can spend too much time thinking about how limited you are, and that there is a need sometimes to think about what kind of abundance we might have. I think that people spend a great deal of money on entertaining themselves in ways that perhaps if they had some better alternatives that they'd rather do it in those ways. And I think that's one of the things that we need to find out by having an election, perhaps. But I'd like to, for example, get kids to doing more of this and maybe a little bit less video games and so on. I think that would be all right.
Right.
Let me remind our viewers once again, we've got a few minutes left here, and we'd love to hear from you. Give us a call at 243-2715 and talk to us about winter sports. One of the issues that came up before is the issue of the gray days in Missoula and the tendency toward depression and so on. I talked about health earlier, but I think there's more than just issues of physical health at stake here. I think that winter is a problem in Missoula in some ways, and that when we get down to March, that a lot of us find that it's been a long winter. And I think part of what you're working on is the idea of trying to make it more fun. That's where you started out, Jerry. That seems to me to be perhaps as important as the physical exercise.
I was just going to say, one of the things we talked about in the committee was when we first started talking about winter and winter sports, well, if we could just raise the elevation of Missoula another
right.
1,000 feet or whatever it was, we kept laughing about that, and yet we do have winter in Missoula, and yet we're low enough that we don't get the consistent cold and the consistent snow that, for instance, Bozeman may get. And so we joked about that a lot, and the gray days are a reality where it's melty and can't quite get what we need to have those winter sports right at our fingertips. And so I think our efforts are to get people excited about winter, and that it's closer than we might think it is.
I think a perfect example of that, Sue, is I like to spend a lot of time cross-country skiing at Patty Canyon. Mm-hmm. And I can't say how many times I will ascend up the canyon out of a stage 1 pollution alert in Missoula to beautiful blue sky, sunshine, just a gorgeous, gorgeous environment that's just a matter of minutes from Missoula. And the transformation from the valley to just a minimal gain in elevation is just incredible, and it's right out our back door. And I think if more people were able to participate in that sort of transition on a regular basis, it would definitely help boost spirits and enthusiasm for winter. It's
and again,
spectacular.
It's accessing the elevation in that case.
Yeah. I might just add a little bit of reason to some of this unabashed enthusiasm. My family and I have lived in places where you had to shovel every flake of that stuff that fell all winter long where it didn't thaw. And Missoula also has the advantage of maybe we don't have to shovel quite so much here, and yet we don't have to go very far to where we can really enjoy the quality white stuff. And so I think maybe that sunshine is as much a matter of internal attitude as it is what comes through the clouds sometime. And if we could create that enthusiasm of, hey, let's go ice skating. And then I met some friends that are going skiing tomorrow. And let that maybe be the spirit raiser rather than filling up the valley to another 1,000 feet like Lake Missoula did. So.
Well, as somebody who has never had sense enough to buy anything but a corner lot, I appreciate the days when we don't have to to shovel snow. Got time for a couple more calls. If you're watching and want to offer an opinion or ask a question about winter sports in Missoula, give us a call at 243-2715. We appreciate the people that have called in already. What's next with the advisory committee? What direction are we moving, Gordon?
Well, right now, Dan, we're really trying to finish up the projects that we started with. We feel that, you know, we're an advisory committee, we're a volunteer committee, and while we have a lot of enthusiasm for this project, we also all have other jobs and families and other responsibilities, and we're trying to be very clear that we don't want to overcommit ourselves, and we want to make sure that what we do start we're able to bring to some completion. And so what we're trying to do right now is finish the tasks that we initially set out to accomplish, and that includes the investigation into the feasibility of an ice rink, looking at how we can enhance the local ski areas, and doing some work with cross-country areas. We will next be thinking in terms of how we can work as a vehicle to promote winter more effectively. Right now we're looking at specific issues that need to be addressed, but we're looking down the road at addressing the issue of how can we convey to the media that we need to disseminate a more spirited, positive view of winter, and what can we do to give people information about resources that are available for winter sports. So that kind of promotion, the media work, the marketing is really going to be a big focus for us down the road.
Okay. Stella is on the line. Hello, Stella.
Hello, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I have a comment. I'm very excited with the idea and that you are going or attempting to put in a skating rink. I remember back when we went to the Olympics in Calgary, and I came back and I was so gung-ho thinking, well, we've got to get a skating rink in Missoula, because I thought how sad that our youngsters do not have the opportunity to learn to skate, and who knows, maybe we could have a champion skater here in Missoula. And I think we really need an indoor skating rink in Missoula. So I live out in the county, and I say, let's go for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
With that kind of attitude, with enough people, I'm sure it will happen. I think that's the key thing, is attitude.
Dan, we had one of the vendors for the construction of ice skating rinks come to Missoula last week and speak to us, and he had mentioned that every time there's a Winter Olympics, the enthusiasm for ice skating just skyrockets. And if you look at the 1990s, there will be 3 Winter Olympics this decade, and so he's anticipating that there will be a lot of interest and enthusiasm for this sport based upon the national exposure via the Olympics. And so I think this is very positive and exciting.
Are there interscholastic events or anything like that that takes place in Montana on ice or in any of the other areas as far as that goes? Are there opportunities for competition if we had, let's say, an ice rink?
Well, as far as we know, not interscholastic between schools, but there certainly would be athletics maybe in the best form, like the Little Grizzlies that go skiing now in an organized group, like the summer Pee Wee Leagues for baseball and some things like that, that could form around hockey and some of those kinds of activities. The committee that's been dealing with ice is committed that making this a community-oriented facility rather than an athletic-oriented facility or anything like that. It's something for the community, and certainly that involves general community skating, it involves skating instruction, and it involves hockey of various kinds for different ages and leagues and some of that. So that would be where athletic events could happen within that kind of a context or arena, I think.
And in the discussions that you've had about an ice rink, there would be seating there for audience?
Our criteria that we've set at this very early stage are that it would seat about 1,000 people. It should seat about 1,000 people. It should have a concession area. It should have a ski rental area, and probably be either standard size, which is 200 feet by about 85 feet, or else Olympic size, which is about 200 feet by 100 feet. So those are the criteria that we're looking at and trying to get cost figures for.
I think we'd probably have time for one more phone call at least. If anybody has got something that they've wanted to say all evening and just haven't worked up the courage to give us a call, I wish you would. Give us a call at 243-2715. Well, we've spent our hour this evening talking about winter sports. I've also got a baseball advisory committee that's working on promoting baseball. Sometimes when we get here to March, it seems like all year is winter in Missoula. One of my favorite descriptions of Missoula weather is 9 months of winter and 3 months of bad skiing. But there is a time when summer comes. How do any of you see the relationship between what you're doing here and summer and spring sports in Missoula?
Well, I think one of the real keys, Dan, is to get people involved in doing things. You know, our society, we're such a nation of spectators. We watch people perform. And what's encouraging to me about what's happening in Missoula is that there's a lifestyle here that invites participation. It invites actually getting out and doing it, whether it's hitting a ball, skiing, skating, and the social benefits, the health benefits are all very, very important. So I think it's very interrelated, that it's a year-round phenomena, that activity is healthy, it's good, and that there's a lot of crossover in a very positive way.
We've got a couple minutes left, and we've got one last caller. Neil?
Yes, I'm just calling to say that I think that a lot of the talk about doing things like skating rink, expanding Snowball Road, things like that, that's all, you know, fine and good, but I think that really one thing that we need to remember is that the quality of life in Missoula is pretty important. For instance, issues like Seattle has, say, a recycling program. In Missoula, it could have a recycling program. You've talked about wintertime activities, and there being gray days in Missoula. Maybe there would be a way for us to address those issues and those kinds of issues before we try to market Missoula maybe as a national spot or bring tourism into play. I think that those things could be good if they're approached in a real reasonable manner, but I'm just concerned as a citizen of Missoula that we don't lose the quality of life that we enjoy in Missoula.
Thank you, Neil, and I'm going to respond to that, and then we're going to wind it up. Thanks very much for that call. And I think it gets us back to where we started, that everybody, as far as I know, who's working on this is interested in quality of life, and I think that probably everybody realizes that that means a lot of different things that we've got to pay attention to. I guess the way that I look at it as mayor is the more energy we've got in this community, the more good things we can do. And I think that what you folks have been working on is a way of increasing the energy that we've got available to us in Missoula. I think that's important, and I appreciate the work you've done, and I appreciate your being on the show. And I appreciate all of the callers this evening. Join us again next month when we'll talk about kids in Missoula. Good night.